Hi, and welcome to G Makes. I'm George, and this is just going to be an overview of this lovely scene here. This is my submission for the Eternal Ascent 3D Community Builder Challenge. I'm pretty happy with this one. I did the the Engines one, which I'll show here, which I had a fun idea, but it wasn't my favorite. And I was kind of rushed working on this, but this I had an idea right off the bat. As you can see, it's very much like kind of a knight, and she's walking up the stairs, and then she's in this kind of, I don't know, Dark Soulsy. It's also inspired by Shrek, the scene in Shrek when he's in the dragon's lair. Here, I'll switch to material preview before I show the render. And yeah, now that the full compilation of all the entries is out, just thought I'd make a little overview of my scene. This isn't going to be a tutorial or anything, but it's going to be kind of a walkthrough, just some things I really like, some things I wish I had more time or would have done differently, and what I'm going to try to do in the next one, if I like the prompt and I have the time to work on it, as this is loading here. It's going to take a while. It's been a little bit since I've opened this file again, and there's a lot going on in the scene, which is probably the first thing I do. I have things pretty well organized, as you can see, so I can optimize what I'm working on. So it's not every time it's super slow on my computer. But my computer itself kind of needs a little upgrade, and then I want to kind of get better optimizing my scenes. But yeah, so this is the general layout. My main idea was, again, because the scene is climbing these stairs, and then you just go rotate around these stairs. And so I wanted this kind of Dark Soulsian, Shrekian. I had this idea of, I just really wanted to make the stained glass window, which I will turn on rendered mode. And this was a lot of fun to make. I really loved this stained glass and how it turned out, especially with the little reference since the Punisher, I guess, Clint, runs these challenges. There's an early corridor sketch, which is like it's a Dark Souls one, and there's a joke about like he has a super strong sword, but it's just a piece of wood with a sword taped to it, and he's got this wild, that's very noisy. He's got this wild facial hair and this kind of weird costume with like a sweater. So I just wanted to reference that in this scene, just as a little tongue-in-cheek, and it was fun to make, and make this kind of stained glass. So if I zoom out, you can see. Really wanted the God rays here, this light, which is controlled using this volume. I just have a cube with a volume texture, which really allowed me to kind of dial in, and it's not around my character, it's just in the front. So if I find my volume, it's labeled right there, volume, turn that off. And once my computer thinks, you will see we will lose all these God rays. Yeah, so the light gets a lot darker. I'm going to keep that off just so I can move around with it rendered and it not be completely crazy. And you can see I have this the lava down here, which is a light mixed with this just like noise texture. And this does animate as well. It's not super detailed, but I enjoyed it. But yeah, this little lava texture, which is just a noise texture, color ramped, mixed with the dark and light parts through an emission texture to get this lava, and I'm pretty happy with that. And then I also have kind of some rocks, which is just geometry nodes set up, which I can show briefly too. It's just a pretty typical like tile, cobblestone kind of go at it. Where's my geometry nodes? There it is. Just kind of a very typical like triangulating a mesh, a grid, and then scaling all those up, separating them, splitting the edges, scaling those elements, extruding them, making them kind of wonky with subdivision modifiers and noise and all that. So tracking material just to make things look a little better. And then I really like this layout. So again, the stairs here are just kind of two different walls. If you shift A and you have extra objects turned on in your settings, you can go to mesh, and then you can go to extras, and then you can do wall factory. And then there's a default setting to make it a cylinder, which is really nice. So I just did that. Same thing, wall factory on these. There is also a brick texture, so it doesn't quite line up, but you get both the like occlusion of the bricks from the actual like wall being bricked, and then the actual like brick texture I have. And I made them try to line up, but it wasn't super important, but it gave that kind of texture of like the displacement maps as well as their actual displacement on the wall. And then some chunks missing, just those are just booleans. I really like all of these little details to make it look a little more Dark Soulsian, and some details on them. These are just curves. So if I go here with just an array modifier, so I just made a bunch of curves that I kind of made into a pattern, kind of copied from a Dark Souls like screenshot. What else? I have a giant rat. This is just a rat model that I added some simple bones to. Can I find my rat over here? Again, keep things organized. I can also search for a rat. He's called Street Rat is what he's called. Street. There we are. Street Rat. So I have my Street Rat, and if I turn on my armature, you can see I really just have a head bone, a body bone, and a couple tail bones. And then I have like wiggle, I think, applied to these later ones, and then I just have noise modifiers to make the head go up and down. So that's pretty fun. I just have some assets I got from, I'll put it on the screen, one of the websites, just some doors and such like that. I had an original idea of like bats flying out, which is why like these chunks are missing, just because I was using a Boyd particle system to make like a swarm. I kind of liked them. They were kind of like the keys from Legend of Zelda, but you couldn't really tell what it was. Maybe if I had them from someplace else or like go past the camera more. Anyway, this is just me ranting about this scene. Things I really like. I really like my character. Not super detailed, but I had fun modeling on the base character and especially making his armor. It pretty much makes sense. It's just objects that are then parented to the mesh, so there's no actual like person inside here because it was clipping through and I don't want to spend too much time working on it. And then of course I have a cape. I have some boxes that are made for the collision, so it's colliding with boxes, not these actual tiny little meshes, especially since the scale for this is pretty small because I didn't mess with it afterwards. Yeah, and then the thing I really like is actually this fire. I think I didn't mess with Embergen or anything. So again, the time constraints and not wanting to learn a whole new system, which I knew a little bit about, but just finding I had this one fire asset, which I think is from like a Battle Box effects pack or like one of the free Action VFX, and it's a torch fire, and it had a nice light little breeze to it, which then I could match to the cape. You can see now these are clipping through as I clip through because I wiggle bones on these shoulder pauldrons, whatever, and they don't want to bake, I think, because the scale's too small. So I have to, if I'm just jumping around, they'll get weird, but they work from the beginning. Anyway, but I really love this texture, and it just has a constraint on it to just match, or maybe it doesn't. I thought it did. So I guess I got away with it. I at one point had a constraint on it to match to my camera, so I was always rotated the camera. But I guess I don't, and it still works. So it's just parented to this torch and to the hand. So it works out pretty well. So it's even better element that it did that, and it looks great. And this just helps, so I didn't have to render anything, and I just have a point light with a flickering for the torch light. Anything else? I mean, I just really love. If anyone wants like any tutorials on any of this stuff, just leave a comment, and I'll get around to it. Like these columns were just arrays of blocks I made, and then more and more arrays. It was really nice to do, just modifiers. The texture for this thing is kind of wild, where I basically mocked up something in Photoshop, and then I have a couple different like passes going through this, so my final texture. So I have just this black and white, which I called outline. So this is just kind of all the opaque stuff, all the black outline where light shouldn't really go through, versus if I get to here we are, this is the glass, so this is the actual color. This is what it looks like in Photoshop pretty much. So it looks like that, but then my final texture gets it more like that. And that is through a mix of, there's a little bit of Musgrave to give it glass, there's a lot of trial and error on this one. I've got noise textures, mixing in where it's like more solid, where it's more see-through, how thick it is. I've got like glossy BSDFs here, because I don't want the like in-between bits to be glossy. Like you wouldn't want the mortar on a brick to be shiny, even if the like bricks are like shiny stones. Same thing with the glass. I don't want these black bits to be shiny. I want them to be rough and not reflective really, but I want the glass to be pretty reflective. And then of course, like I want those to be transparent, but I don't want other things to be transparent. So a lot of work, but I'm happy with how it turned out. I think it looks great with that volume, with those God rays, and I have just basically a couple bright lights specifically behind it, lighting up my scene. And then random little point lights to help light up and make things clearer. Again, like I had a pretty clear vision on what I wanted this to be. I think there could have been a little more action for this specific type, because I was like, a lot of the like higher ranking ones, like the top 100, all kind of have more going on in the background. I just like this idea of the castle wall, and I knew my restraints and my limitations both for time, how much effort I want to put into it, and also just what my computer can do. But I think in the future, if I were to do that, definitely a couple more passes. I just kind of do everything in one, and I do some compositing in the compositor with like my ambient occlusion and glare and stuff like that, some color changing if I need motion blur, and I don't want to break my computer in cycles, all that kind of stuff. And then in After Effects in the final render, it's a little subtle, but you'll actually be able to see some heat distortion. I just did some displacement down here to make it look like it's really hot down there, and I was really happy with that. But going forward, I think I want to get better at and work more towards like different render passes. So again, knowing I have my background done, just render that out. And then knowing I have like, and then I can render my foreground, and then I can do a little more depth of field play, or, and then if I need to change one thing in one of those sections, I don't have to re-render the whole thing. Or even like more animated characters. I just have some like dead zombies here, but I could have like a mimic or something, but having those on separate layers, that way with like all the railings and stuff, just blocking them, so that way I can add those in separately. Or if I just need to tweak the animation again, don't have to render out my whole scene, I can add them later. So I want to get better at that kind of compartmentalizing. But yeah, I hope this was useful to you. I'm just gonna call it there. It's been 10 to 15 minutes. Don't want to make this too long, because it's really just me kind of rambling about this fun little scene I have. But yeah, if you have any questions, or want to see any little tutorials based on this, leave them in the comments down below. I'll do my best to answer them, and if idea seems like a good one for a tutorial, I'll go ahead and do that, because I had a lot of fun making this. And if any of you two, any of y'all down in the comments made one of these renders too, like leave what you did, and if you had similar ideas or went in a completely different direction. Again, I kind of went with my first thought this time, because I just didn't want to think too hard about like trying to come up with something cool that would like be really epic. I was like, I have this cool idea, this one thing, this stained glass window I want to try, and this kind of night character I want to make, and then I did it, and then I ended up on here. So that's it. I've been George. Again, if you have any questions, comments, or want to see any tutorials from this or anything, leave those in the comments below. And if you like this kind of rambly thing, I do this every so often when I make one of these bigger renders. I also do those like more specific tutorials in VFX, in Blender and other programs, when an idea kind of hits me. So if you have any suggestions or want to see that, leave them in the comments below. And if this kind of stuff interests you, then go ahead and click that subscribe button to stay up to date with what I'm making. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at GeorgeMakes, GMakes3D, or GeorgeMakes3D on Instagram. All that stuff's on my channel. So yeah, I'll catch you next time. Hope this was useful to you, and peace.